Hi there, this is Clovis from KinematicLAB. Here is a little tool called Roll. So let's see what this is. That's a modifier you can apply on any geometry, so I'm going to add it to this torus. And you can use it to roll your object over the ground, like if it was a rigid body simulation. But now you have a full artistic control over it. So we first create a helper in the scene, okay, like this one, and we pick it in the modifier. So I will use the pick driver button here, and I pick it. So what you see now is that the modifier popped up this geometry over the ground. So you can see here a value called rest frame. This is the frame where the object will find its rest pose. I will explain later why. So if you want to start animating, you need to go to another frame, okay, since the pose is locked on the rest frame. So if you move the helper now, you can see your object rotating and colliding on the ground, okay, like if it was simulated. And you can keyframe this helper to create the animation you need. So let's create some keyframes. Okay, maybe another one in the middle here. Okay, fine. Now let me explain why we have the rest frame and the reset pose button. When you move the helper, like that, for example, it animates the object, okay? But when you go back to a previous helper pose, so check how this pose is, and I'm going back and forth, I'm going back again, and you will notice that it's changing, okay? It's definitely not the same anymore, even if I go back to the same frame. So the object doesn't always go back to its original transform, because its current pose, okay, this pose right here, or this one, is the result of all the little moves I do with the helper, okay? You see here that if I rotate, if I move this around like that, the torus kind of rotate over itself, okay? And if I go back here, it doesn't mean that it's the same pose as before, because all these rotations, like in real life, are kind of cumulative. So to be sure the start of your animation is always good, we added the rest frame value here, and you can set it to the frame you need. So if your start pose is this, it's always be this on frame 0, so it resets the simulation on this frame. And you can even reset the pose at any frame using the reset pose button. Okay, you can go there, run reset pose, and it's going to be back to the rest pose. Okay, so now let's talk about the ground options. The first option here is the project only. So if I check this on, you will see that it doesn't roll anymore, okay, but it is still projected on the ground. So you can change its geometry or its deformations under the roll modifier, and it's going to update the roll modifier to be projected on the ground. So if I add an X-form modifier and I rotate the X-form, or I can even scale it. Okay, it's going to stay projected on the ground. Can add anything there. Okay, twist maybe. And you see that it's still projected. Okay, the weird stuff you see is the mix of the X-form and the twist. So yeah, let's remove those and turn the project only option off. And then you have this offset value. This value moves your object above and below the ground, okay? And if you're under 0, you can use the collide option to flatten the geometry on ground collision. So when I animate it, you see what is happening. It's always flattened here. And you also have a bulge option to inflate the mesh volume. And this allows you to use the force and the tangents values here to adjust the bulge effect. So when I move up and down with the offset, you see what is happening with the bulge. Okay, and I can adjust the force and the tangents here is useful to adjust the shape of the bulge. I'm going to add more subdiv. So you can do pretty nice stuff. Okay, like if it was a bit sticky or just like a tire. Okay, you might notice that it's spinning when it's up there, so I'm going to talk about that. Let's remove the collide and bulge options and the offset. So let's go in the fly parameters here. So you can move your object up, of course, if you want to make it bounce or anything, okay? So to do that, you have this fly option. When it is off, the object still kind of collide the virtual plane aligned to the Z position of this helper. But when it's on, if your object is not colliding the ground, it will spin according to the previous velocity when it was on the ground. Okay, you see? If I'm going so it spins until it collides the ground again. Okay. And you have also this air friction parameter to define how fast the spin will stop in the air. So this is pretty low, but if I put it to 0.08, for example, it's going to stop way faster. Which is interesting as well, depending on what you want to do, your animation. It's going to affect the rest of your animation, of course. So I'm going to add some other keyframes here to make it fly. And we lower this value to make it rotate a bit more. So you notice that it's not always the same animation because some frames are jumping because of the real-time stuff. So if you set this off, you should have something always the same. Yes, that is what is supposed to happen. That's why it's very important to have this reset frame set on, and that your animation is always starting from this one to reset the simulation. And now we are going to talk about the baking options, because this is important for the integrity of the animation, because it's kind of a real-time simulation. You want to keep the result, so you need to bake it. And we added a few options to do that. So you can bake the animation in memory. So that is by default what is happening. So the end of my animation is about 160. So I'm pressing bake, and it's going to save the animation in the modifier. So when I'm playing back, it's playing way faster and always in the same way. Okay, and you can also bake in a helper. So it's going to create a new helper in the scene and bake the transforms on the keyframes of this helper. Okay, you see there is a new helper here. Okay, with all the keyframes, and it is now linked to this helper. So the helper option is very interesting because you can parent anything to this helper. It can be a higher resolution of this mesh. So you just do the animation with a low res version, so it's faster. And then after that, you parent another mesh to it for rendering. Or you can use this current object, okay, and you can collapse it. So you remove the modifier and you parent it now to the helper, and then you can render it anywhere or give it to anyone without the plugin. Okay, let's go back. And you can also bake from current time. So this is also very interesting because what you do at any point of the animation can affect what is happening after that. So that's important to keep your animation if you are happy with it. So I know that I'm baked until 160, but I want to rebake it from 153 to 170, for example. I just baked this part and everything before hasn't changed. So I can do things like more precise animations like that. So I'm going to put it down here. I know it's rolling like that. And boom. Here. a little bit more there. It's not exactly what I wanted, so I'm going back here a little bit more, and I rebake it. Okay, so I have this little bounce. Okay, so now you see the animation. And you have this little bounce at the end that I controlled precisely, okay, without touching anything else. So let's remove this and see something else. So of course you can attach, link all the role on different objects into the same helper to drive all of them at the same time. So I did that so you can see what is going on with different meshes. So that's always kind of fun to see these little boxes doing it differently. Okay, even the teapot is kind of crazy. Okay, and you can control every modifier separately, like anything you know in Max. And of course we can change ooh. I didn't expect that. You can change the shape before the role is going to be updated. And that's it. I hope you like it.